Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering companies panic, abandon diversity programs. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from the Wall Street Journal, corporate America tweaks diversity initiatives amid pushback. Legal pressure and other criticisms have led to a quiet rethinking of the programs. Also from the Wall Street Journal, white Starbucks manager fired after arrests of two black men wins $25 million. Shannon Phillips was terminated less than a month after the arrests. Also from the Wall Street Journal, Republican attorneys general warned top U.S. businesses over discrimination. Citing affirmative action ruling, top state law officials put Fortune 100 on notice for racial quotas and preferences. From the Wall Street Journal, corporate America tweaks diversity initiatives amid pushback. Corporate America's diversity initiatives are here to stay, but they're being adjusted in response to lawsuits and intense scrutiny. They're trying to hold on to them, but they know they're mostly illegal and they're going to have to cut it out. Businesses are trying to fashion programs that foster inclusion without running afoul of the law and potentially bringing costly consequences, according to lawyers and top corporate advisors working on such policies. That means some are abandoning the most legally risky and potentially discriminatory practices, such as numerical targets that can be seen as quotas, or the use of unconscious bias training that casts blame. Yeah, quotas are obviously not appropriate. That means, sorry, you're not the right skin color or gender, or you don't have the right sexual preference, so we can't hire you. A less divisive approach is in at many organizations. After George Floyd's death in 2020, U.S. businesses from sneaker company Nike to Wells Fargo Bank rolled out diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives as the company took a hard look at racial inequality. But legal pressure following this year's Supreme Court decision to strike down affirmative action in college admissions has led to, if not a retreat from DEI programs, a rethink in how to best approach them. Quote, frankly, employers got really comfortable doing some things that were questionable, said Johnny Taylor Jr., an employment lawyer who leads the Society for Human Resource Management, a trade group for human resource executives. I just cringed at some of the pronouncements that were being made. But do you think he mentioned it publicly? Probably not. A lot of people were afraid to speak up at things that were obviously illegal. This is not a communist country. Individuals do have specific constitutional rights. You can't be discriminated against because of your skin color or your gender or your sexual preferences. Of course we have laws against that. And it's time these companies woke up. Quote, some well-intentioned CEOs and board leaders made major pronouncements that, for example, 1 in 3 of our going forward hires are going to be people of color or women. And you just can't say that, Taylor said. Boy, this guy sounds like me. Taylor said some business leaders he had spoken to have begun wholesale reviews of their organization's DEI policies. Any policy shifts tend to be undertaken quietly, however, because businesses don't want to give plaintiffs' lawyers a potential angle to sue by implicitly conceding a past policy might have been illegal, he said. Quote, not surprisingly, they're not exactly announcing it. Will DEI programs disappear? The programs themselves don't seem to be disappearing. Chief Human Resource Officers don't plan to scale back diversity initiatives, according to 194 executives who participated in a survey released in December by the Conference Board, a nonprofit business research organization. Still, the tone has shifted, said Diana Scott, leader of the Conference Board's U.S. Human Capital Center. Quote, many companies felt pressure to jump on the bandwagon, and I think that the pendulum swung way far in one direction, Scott said. Some companies are quietly pulling back from quotas and things that could be perceived as discriminatory. These things are so ridiculously illegal. The issue is whether or not anyone has the guts to bring lawsuits against these companies. And some people do. America First Legal is a great example, but there are many other organizations that are stepping up and saying, no, we're not going to have this in the United States of America. We don't care if you think you're doing it for good intentions or if you think you're doing it for bad intentions. You're getting sued, so you better just stop it. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision last year in the case challenging affirmative action at Harvard University didn't directly touch on employment law, but prodded some businesses to reconsider their practices. Quote, the Harvard decision woke up a lot of people, said Natasha Telianu. Shareholder activists, politicians, conservative groups, and employees all have repeatedly challenged what they say are illegal practices that some of the country's most influential corporations have used in the pursuit of diversifying their workforces. 2024 is going to be a big year for DEI lawsuits. There are many cases in the works right now. Of course, we're going to cover it on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. At a hearing in Miami last week, for example, an appeals court heard arguments on the legality of a program operated by the philanthropic arm of venture fund Fearless Fund that awards grants to businesses owned by Black women. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit voted to block the fund from picking new grant winners while it considers the appeal. In a ruling last month, a federal judge refused to throw out a case challenging diversity training at Pennsylvania State University that a professor said vilified white people, though the judge dismissed some claims. Aggrieved white employees are increasingly bringing lawsuits over what some term reverse discrimination, and in some cases winning damages in the tens of millions of dollars. Quote, "They're real," said Melissa Atkins, a partner in a law firm who represents employers. "You see more of them now than you have in past years." A federal jury, for example, last year awarded more than $25 million to a white former Starbucks regional manager who oversaw a Philadelphia store where 2 Black men were arrested in 2018, finding that her subsequent firing was a result of racial discrimination. Starbucks said it remains committed to, quote, "creating a culture of warmth and belonging where everyone is welcome." It has set goals of achieving racial and ethnic diversity of at least 30% at the corporate level and at least 40% in manufacturing and store roles by 2025. The coffee chain also has created a fund that invests in small business growth in communities with historically limited access to capital. Starbucks declined to comment on what changes it made to its human resources policies, if any, following the lawsuit. Targeting the targets? Fixed numerical targets, sometimes seen as quotas, have drawn particular attention in the new environment, and lawyers say can potentially open a company up to legal action. Following the Harvard decision, a group of Republican attorneys general last year warned businesses against the use of racial quotas and preferences. A group headed by Stephen Miller, a former senior advisor to former President Trump, has also sued and lodged official challenges targeting dozens of businesses. In the past few months, America First Legal has filed federal complaints over alleged quotas at Nike that it says discriminate against white men, alleged anti-white racial quotas by toy makers Hasbro and Mattel, and allegedly discriminatory practices at American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and United Airlines, and many more. We cover a lot of what they do at America First Legal. It's a great organization. United claims it maintains the highest standards for pilot hiring, training, and safety, and that it provides no exceptions. American and Mattel declined to comment. The other companies didn't respond to requests for comment, and I'm not surprised they didn't respond because they are doing illegal stuff. Companies also face challenges from right-leaning groups using the ownership of their shares as a basis to challenge diversity programs. Last year saw a record number of what's known as anti-ESG shareholder proposals, including some challenging employment practices. The abbreviation is short for environmental, social, and corporate governance. Of course, what they don't mention here is that leftists have been using these shareholder proposals by buying a few shares and then submitting a proposal to push their woke agenda, their DEI hiring, their ESG proposals. They've been doing that. Finally, the anti-ESG people, the anti-DEI people have realized, hey, why don't we just do the same thing? So they did, and now they're getting results. Scott Shepard, executive director of the Free Enterprise Project at the conservative think tank National Center for Public Policy Research, said his organization is trying to negotiate with a number of companies right now after floating shareholder proposals. NCPPR already has put forth proposals targeting financial services firms Citigroup, snacks and soda company PepsiCo, and farm machinery maker John Deere. Additionally, boards can be sued on the grounds that they failed to curb diversity policies that could, in theory, open a company up to discrimination lawsuits from white or male employees. Another practice under scrutiny is the use of diversity training programs that bring up hot-button topics such as white supremacy, which some say can foster antagonism. Well, of course they would. It's a nonsensical concept. A Canadian anti-racism trainer drew scrutiny after allegedly bullying a white principal who disagreed with the trainer's views on systemic racism. The principal sued after allegedly being ostracized by colleagues in the wake of the training and later died by suicide. The company behind that training, Kojo Institute, called the allegations false and said it still believes white supremacy is an important topic to address. They haven't killed enough people yet. They want to keep pushing this sick agenda. But we would not go anywhere near training that uses phrases like white supremacy, said Dominic Camacho Moran, a partner at his law firm who advises companies on employment law. Quote, you have to be really careful not to be part of the problem. Despite the frothy legal environment, many advisors feel diversity programs are valuable and can be crafted in a way that insulates the companies from legal challenges. Corporate advisors roundly suggest focusing on the I of DEI, that is inclusion. Quote, we want everybody to feel like they belong, said Moran. This Starbucks manager sure didn't feel like she belonged. She sued them and got $25 million from the Wall Street Journal. White Starbucks manager fired after arrest of 2 black men wins $25 million. A federal jury awarded more than $25 million to a white former Starbucks regional manager who oversaw the Philadelphia location where 2 black men were arrested in 2018, finding that she was fired because of racial discrimination. The jury in New Jersey's U.S. District Court determined this week that Starbucks must pay damages to the former employee for violating discrimination laws, according to court records. She wasn't in the store when the arrest happened. She was fired less than a month after the episode, which at the time prompted accusations of racism, protests, customer boycotts, and a public apology from Starbucks. A manager at the location Phillips oversaw called the police in 2018, saying the 2 men refused to leave the cafe after they were blocked from using the restroom because they hadn't bought anything. A video of them being handcuffed by the police circulated widely. They weren't charged with any crimes. Starbucks later apologized for the arrest and initiated a public crisis management campaign. The company closed its U.S. stores, all of them, for an afternoon of employee anti-bias training and pledged to make its cafes more welcoming to everyone. Starbucks apologized to the 2 men, Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson, and settled with them for an undisclosed amount, so they got paid money just to get arrested at a Starbucks. Starbucks and a lawyer who represented the 2 men didn't return requests for comment. They were too busy spending their money, probably on some private Caribbean island. Phillips, at the time of the arrest, was a regional director at Starbucks, where she oversaw managers and retail operations at several cafes in the Northeast. She said the company disciplined white employees who hadn't been involved in the arrests. Phillips sued Starbucks in her home state of New Jersey in 2019, alleging racial discrimination. She said it was humiliating to be fired from the company she'd worked for 13 years. One of her lawyers said in a statement that Starbucks treated Phillips, now 51 years old, as a scapegoat to show it had taken action after the arrests. Starbucks said in court filings that it terminated Phillips because she wasn't an effective leader during a company crisis. The jury awarded Phillips $25 million in punitive damages meant as a penalty for Starbucks and $600,000 in compensatory damages to account for her losses. I know what you're thinking. Sure, we could all go through a lawsuit like that. Just give us $25 million. Republican attorneys general, though, are warning top U.S. businesses they need to watch it with their discrimination. Citing the affirmative action ruling, top state law officials put Fortune 100 on notice. A group of Republican attorneys general issued a letter to the nation's largest companies, warning them against race-based preferences in hiring, promotions, and contracting after the Supreme Court's recent decision finding affirmative action unconstitutional. The letter said discrimination is common at many companies and said the High Court decision last month to strike down race-based policies in college admissions should send a signal to corporate C-suites and boardrooms. Quote, the Supreme Court's recent decision should place every employer and contractor on notice of the illegality of racial quotas and race-based preferences in employment and contracting practices, said the letter, signed by the attorneys general of 13 states, led by Kansas and Tennessee. The signatories are the chief legal officers of their states. The move reflects a long-standing Republican goal of curtailing corporate diversity efforts that many conservatives see as hiring or promoting people of color at the expense of fairness to all, which is exactly what it is. The letter targets corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs known by the acronym DEI, as well as what it alleged were quotas and preferences in selecting suppliers. Companies have for years sought to have employee roles reflect the demographics of a multiracial nation, saying a diverse workplace is good for business. Pew Research found in a February poll that 54% of Americans feel their company pays the right amount of attention to diversity initiatives. Quote, we urge you to immediately cease any unlawful race-based quotas or preferences your company has adopted for its employment and contracting practices, the letter said. If you choose not to do so, know that you will be held accountable. American businesses could once predict a national marketplace where business practices could be applied consistently across the entire country. But high-profile court decisions combined with the gridlock in Congress are leaving major policy decisions up to the states where Republicans and Democrats are pushing starkly different priorities on issues from gun laws to abortion to environmental initiatives. The Supreme Court found it unconstitutional to consider race in university admissions, eliminating the principal tool the nation's most selective schools have used to diversify their campuses. They're being forced to go back to merit. Republican signatories to the letter in interviews said the decision amounts to legal precedent that puts corporations on notice. Some legal experts expressed doubt about those assertions. Quote, nothing in the Supreme Court's recent affirmative action case has any direct application to employment, said Pauline Kim, a professor at Washington University in St. Louis who specializes in employment law. Companies know the game is up. They're going to get sued for doing things illegally, even if they say they had the best of intentions. The best of intentions is not a legal defense. Employment is governed under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which bans hiring based on race. But in general, corporate diversity initiatives typically don't seek to hire one applicant over another because of race, Kim said. They instead focus on expanding applicant pools or changing hiring procedures. Quote, these types of actions do not constitute discrimination on the basis of race, and therefore none of them run afoul of the law, Kim said. On Friday, a day after the letter was issued, the Democratic Attorneys General Association responded by condemning what they described as a Republican threat to American business and workers. Quote, their letter contains cherry-picked sources that paint a false picture of America's workforce today, said DAGA co-chairs Kathy Jennings of Delaware and Aaron Ford of Nevada in a statement. Quote, it is legal for businesses to be responsive to their workforce's wishes and concerns through diversity programs and initiatives, the statement said. Many business leaders have for decades been rightfully committed to supporting all of their employees and enriching their businesses as a result. No, it's not legal. Even if employees want it to happen, if employers want it to happen, that doesn't make discrimination legal. The winds, however, are shifting, said Roger King, employment attorney with HR Policy Association, a trade group of human resource professionals. Businesses remain deeply committed to diversity, but they are seeking help in avoiding anything that might bring on legal challenges. King referred to it as litigation mitigation. Businesses are bracing for an all-out assault on diversity efforts, King said. The letter cited multiple examples in which corporate diversity efforts amounted to what the attorneys general alleged was effectively illegal quotas or preferences. Even if a company successfully defended against such allegations, a win would be a Pyrrhic victory. Quote, the reputation hit you take is one you want to avoid, King said. Quote, racial discrimination is both immoral and illegal, the letter said. Such race-based employment and contracting violates both state and federal law, and as the chief law enforcement officers of our representative states, we intend to enforce the law vigorously. Corporate diversity efforts ramped up after George Floyd's death in mid-2020, sparking a wider examination of racial inequality at work. Some signs show those efforts have been cooling in recent months. The letter lauded corporate efforts that resulted in positive social mobility and opportunities for underprivileged Americans, provided such advancement isn't the result of preference based on race. Quote, I don't think it's an unworthy goal to try to offer opportunities and have perspectives from different parts of society, said Jonathan Scrimetti, Attorney General for Tennessee, as one of the signatories to the letter in an interview. But when you start making decisions based solely on skin color, that's a legal issue. But there are some very hungry lawyers out there that are looking to go after all that conduct, Scrimetti said. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.